On Tuesday, the 27th of March 2018, the UK tabloids and media were running with the story that Paul O'Grady, a very famous, well-liked TV personality, on the 27th of March 2018, he was taking his dog for a walk down in the orchard in his backyard, and he looks up and he sees this string of lights, UFO type lights, unidentified flying lights, in a formation. Basically he's very worried that at night aliens could surround him in his bed, that the aliens were watching him, and this is very brave of him to come and say that he feels that he's being watched by aliens and that aliens could potentially be surrounding him at night. But before we go into the heroic nature of his own disclosure, let's have a look at the actual story behind it. Various witnesses have been reporting that over Folkestone, Dungness and Hythe, lights in the sky, similar to the Phoenix lights in Arizona in 1997, were flying in formation. Now these were not ship flares or lighthouses or Chinese lanterns against the prevailing winds or the military bases around there. They're not been reporting any exercises. Certainly not the lights of helicopters flying in formation, say. Don't seem to be making any noise, certainly from those distances anyway. So they were saying it's not an army exercise. It does sound rather like the Phoenix lights, where in 1997 on March the 13th, a formation of lights flew over Phoenix in Arizona. This is also seen in California, Nevada, Utah, and New Mexico. 5 lights. That was seen by thousands of people. Firstly, well, it just could be the military. They don't have to tell us everything they are doing. They're not bound to do that. It could be any number of things, from a weapons test. You can get laser-induced plasma effects fired by non-lethal weaponry. Or it could just be stealth aircraft on a NATO exercise, or it could be any number of things like that. But given that it does seem to be parading about that particular area, it does also sound like UFO activity. Very brave of Paul O'Grady to come out and say that. The perspective, of course, is that there is a high-level media personality thinking to himself that perhaps the aliens might surround my bed at night and take me away. Now that's not an unnatural feeling. In the folklore, for centuries, people have been reporting their livestock, like cattle, being abducted, their cats and their dogs are being abducted and replaced, and people over the years have been abducted and replaced. I think David Moncur was telling a story about a gentleman called Robert France, who appeared to be flickering on and off like he had some sort of hologram issues. Now that's been, denied by Mr. France himself, of course, but there are people that say that they saw these things, like Brian McMullen, and there have been some people reporting people within these holograms. I myself have seen something similar, and it just could be that people do get replaced. I think that over the centuries, certainly over the millennia, ordinary human beings have been replaced. It might be that Paul O'Grady might be thinking to himself, well, nobody's ever going to employ me in the media again, because if I'm coming out and saying this, it could put the doubt in people's heads, well, if they can replace Paul O'Grady, a leading media personality, who else can they replace? Certainly there does seem to be the case that the politicians that we vote for and get in suddenly become unhuman overnight, as it were, and they roll out policies completely contradictory and contrary to what we wanted them to implement in the first place. There could be a case for, say, people being abducted. Where do you stop with that, though? High-ranking military generals or intelligence operatives. If you were an alien civilization that could do things like that could replace politicians, people of influence, people of authority, then obviously if you could do that, have that not noticed, if your hologram box maybe works 95% of the time, then that's sufficient. Surely you could be a little grey with a hologram, and that the real person could be sitting in a big glass jar full of green goo somewhere. But the thing is that you can fool most of the people most of the time with this technology. What could you be implementing? Strange stuff that people didn't vote for could then take place. It might be that there is some international program to sort of do that. I've heard this story before where United Nations officials, for instance, have been abducted out of high-rise flats in New York. I have heard of this. So anyway, Paul, I think, was very brave in coming out and saying that. It does beg the question, though, can influential, high-ranking people be abducted, programmed, or replaced by aliens? Huge question. And thanks very much, Paul Grady, for bringing this to light. I was very heroic of him because he must have known that there would be some sort of at least cynical backlash to it. But well done, Paul Grady, for pointing this out.